Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mini Metro. This time will be the one in Osaka where it's just simply week 10 in Osaka, Japan, which is this is really just a survival, pretty much a survival kind of mission type thing. Survive as long as you can until you reach this certain milestone, and as such, there's really not much in the way of strategies, in my opinion, apart from the usual, really just keep an eye on everything, micromanage when necessary, and especially when it gets tight, and you should be fine, although may very well be talking out my ass, because I have played this game long enough to be good enough at it, in my opinion. So, the deal with doing a metro in Osaka is that you get the advantage of having Shinkansens, which translates to bullet trains, and they are basically trains with the same amount of capacity. They can hold 6 customers, but they travel much faster. And that can actually lead to some questions as to how and when should you use them, or when should you choose one over 2 locomotives, as you will see by the end of each week. So it's nearing the end of the first week, and you will see what happens here. You either get a choice between 2 locomotives or 1 Shinkansen every week. And that's where the decision making can be actually a little difficult. And so definitely I will try and sort of just comment and add some points to this in relation to the achievement. I think if I had to provide a general guideline, it would be to focus on getting more locomotives first until you have about almost 3 locomotives on every relatively full line, and then you can start getting Shinkansens to sort of mop up the rest. Or if you're having a line that's especially very problematic due to whatever reason, then maybe having a Shinkansen would help as well. It's also dependent on some of the station placements and where some of the customers are getting sort of like banked up and which stations are getting congested. And there are some very specific examples in this playthrough which I will try and point out, and which I distinctly remember because I was thinking, having a Shinkansen for this would actually be great, because then it will actually encourage the movement of customers through that area. The other thing I want to add is that with the Shinkansens, it's when you get carriages, the carriages are best given to the Shinkansens first, because then one thing to point out is that if a normal locomotive has an additional carriage, and let's say the carriage is full, that locomotive would take more time at each station to load and to I want to say deposit, but that's not quite the right word, but I'm sure you get what I mean. To load and deposit each customer, because there are basically more customers to take on and to leave and to deposit. Ugh. I need a thesaurus. Moving on. Moving on in general, so Shinkansen's carriages should ideally be held to Shinkansens, and I wouldn't recommend putting a carriage on a normal locomotive, mainly because it's a bit hard to sort of see how streamlined the movement of customers can be once you've got one train with one locomotive with a carriage on it, and then with 3 other trains on it. And even though having the additional carriage will sort of be good for the, like, say, the additional managing of crowded stations, it causes a bit of imbalance, which may potentially mean that you end up micromanaging too much earlier on. So, and the other thing that's also very important, at least for this achievement, is definitely the interchanges. And in the same way I mentioned in previous videos, since the square station tends to not be very common, it makes most sense to give your first interchange to the square station as long as you have it sort of like hooked up reasonably enough to most, if not all, of the other lines. And now Shinkansen carriages, intersections. What else was I gonna say? Alright, the left part as well. As you can already see, it's a very messy looking left part with plenty of islands, meaning you will need plenty of bridges from memory, I think you only need to get an additional 2 bridges in order to sort of just be able to comfortably loop one line through all of these islands, and as such, that's really the only consideration you will have to do. And I think, in my opinion, if you have to get more than 2 additional bridges, then you're probably not getting the most efficient, or you have a very awkward placement of stations. So as you can see, I've got my first Shinkansen, and that was mainly because I was thinking the red line is having some issues. And the other thing to point out now is that in relation to the square station, if you look at the green and the purple lines, they are most likely to deposit the square customers at that triangle station where all of the lines meet. As such, having a Shinkansen going in that direction basically means that when the Shinkansen meets all those square customers, you can pick them up quickly and deposit them at the square intersection station, which is, since now it's an intersection, all the square customers get deposited very quickly, and then you can just move on, sort of just helping out all the other stations. So that's kind of my thinking in my regard, and I will admit that I was lucky to be able to get a setup in this kind of situation. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of square customers getting stuck at that central station, so my Shinkansen certainly got its work cut out for him. In terms of managing the other stations, especially on the more outer areas on the right, there is, again, it can get notoriously difficult in the sense that you will get a whole bunch of circle stations potentially in a row, which means that potential congestions may occur and essentially make life difficult for you. And I really don't have any easier advice than to sort of just manage it as it comes, but try to avoid having too many circle stations in a row, and try to have enough lines to be able to deal with each of them. So again, it's still all in a very reactive manner. You sort of just, at the end of each week, you sort of just look at the current situation. You just try to predict what might come next, and then you pick the resource that you think will best fit your needs. So as you can see, just now I had a bit of trouble with the red line trying to get my bridges around and working, mainly because I did not think, I don't recall if I actually had the opportunity to take bridges in an earlier week, but definitely the lack of the not taking some additional bridges caused me to have to reorganize things a little. But nevertheless, it's not really so much a problem with three trains on the red line not being that particularly big of a deal, and most of the red lines actually keeping pretty chill for the time being. I will point out there is a fair number of unique stations, which certainly can be a problem, or an upcoming problem really, and it can and will be a potential problem. So as you can see, I've taken the carriage at week 6, but 2 locomotives, and I've attached that carriage to the Shinkansen in order to take advantage of the Shinkansen's fast speed, and that's certainly working out very well for us. And it should. I'm taking a look at and I've got all 3 trains on the red line going in the same direction. That was probably because of that triangle station where everyone's depositing all the square and unique customers. So for me, it made sense at the time to have all the red trains deal with all the square customers in that sense. So as you can see, I've just added the 4th red train going in the opposite direction to hopefully sort of just mitigate some of the customers coming, and to hopefully transport some customers in the opposite direction. So while we're hugging along, just like to touch on now that, or just to reiterate the point about sort of just trying to focus mostly on getting 2 locomotives every week. The occasional Shinkansen if you can find a good use for it. But otherwise, you should aim on try and getting each line almost up to 3 locomotives as possible. Certainly more important for the busier and the longer lines, as longer lines obviously mean more stations and more customers, and sort of just having having trains readily available. So it's week 7, and you can see me choosing an interchange, actually choosing it to deposit at that triangle station, because unwittingly I actually had created a point or a station where having an intersection would actually be very handy, because As I pointed out before, all the other lines would tend to deposit their customers there. So, namely the unique customers, the teardrop, pentagon, and star customers, as well as the square customers. So it only makes sense to have an intersection station there in order to be able to handle all that extra capacity. And at the same time, it gives the benefit of being able to deposit triangle customers very quickly for the other lines, and as such, it is certainly a positive boon and addition to this current metro network. Moving on, I think looking at it now, definitely I will probably want to get another train line next week, as my purple line is my purple, pink, and green lines are fairly stretched out. The blue line is not stretched out as much, but sometimes there is the potential for stations to spawn up there, so as a result I haven't really sort of just not worried too much about the blue and the blue line just as of yet. And obviously with the huge number of circle stations spawning on the right side of the map, it's definitely going to be a very very problematic. It will certainly be very problematic in future weeks to come. And as you can see, we're getting a fair amount of congestion on the purple line. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's I don't even remember how I was able to handle this, but but somehow if I'm doing this post commentary, it means I know the result, and but I actually recorded this a while ago, so I don't actually quite remember what I did. So it'll be very interesting to watch my own playing and to give myself some feedback as well. So week 8, this is where it can get a bit difficult to choose between locomotives and Shinkansen, and I was sort of just thinking at this time I could definitely use a Shinkansen to help out on the purple line. So unfortunately, to my chagrin, my purple line already had 4 trains, so just moving one locomotive from the purple over to the pink, and hence allowing me to put the Shinkansen in the opposite direction to hopefully get hopefully clear out some of the congestion in a much more smoother and more consistent manner, since my locomotives are probably a little too slow to deal with such things. Certainly, certainly, as I predicted, I got another line in order to sort of just help shrink some of our current lines, as in my opinion, the purple and the pink lines are far too long for my liking, and that with a whole bunch of successive circle stations, this definitely not a very comfortable situation to be in. And even more aggravating is the fact that there is one cross station in the middle of all these circle stations on the purple line. So you can sort of see me stretching the purple line right now, just thinking I need to have a triangle station somewhere, because otherwise a lot of stations are going to get very congested, and the trains will be too full and we'll have to pass by them. It's worth pointing out, so I've now got 2 Shinkansens. I've got the red and the purple lines mostly full, two trains on the blue, 1, 2, 3 on the pink, and 2 on the green. Certainly in the upcoming weeks, I can definitely afford to take more locomotives, especially when I install my additional or my last 2 lines. Although that said, I do recall running into a couple of problems in which what am I trying to say? I do recall running into a couple of problems in which, even though I had all these trains and I would get an additional line, I will actually not have a train for when I put an additional line down. So like, say if I put down the brown line right now, I would not have a locomotive available, but of course right now everything looks to be fairly smooth and clean and easy going, so taking the train away from any of them could definitely upset that balance and cause me to think, and cause me to end up micromanaging the rest. So you can see me retracting the pink line a bit in order to achieve a bit more variety between the stations looping through, but also to install the brown line up on the top right, so that we can take a bit of pressure off the pink line, and also link the pink line to the triangle intersection in order to make life a bit easier. I'm doing pretty much the same with the brown line, although I'm now just observing that I was just having some trouble linking it to the triangle intersection. But nevertheless, I think nevertheless, the addition of this brown line is definitely useful and handy for just mitigating some of the pressures, mitigating some of the stress. And since I retracted some of the pink line to make way for the brown line, it makes sense to transfer one train from the pink line in order to onto the brown line. So end of I wasn't even looking. I think it was end of week 9 that I chose another two trains and one carriage, and I've slowed down the game now so that I can focus on micromanagement. Got that triangle intersection station still banking a bunch of customers, and our ever so hardworking Shinkansen has been doing a great job in taking customers away and moving customers, especially the square customers, over to the square station. So you can see that I've added the carriage I've got to the Shinkansen on the purple line, and pretty much as I said before, is to help deal with the congestion that's happening along due to the consecutive circle stations on the purple line. And since the Shinkansen is fast, it basically offsets the faster speed of the Shinkansen offsets the additional time that's required to load and to drop off customers. So that's certainly something you can definitely take. That's certainly something you can take advantage of. Just now I stretched the blue line up a bit because I sort of just knew that there will be at least a station spawning up there. So having the blue line sort of like retracted and then just sort of ready to deal with those kind of stations is definitely important. Although now I know I'm still continuing to stretch the pink and the purple lines. Definitely when I get my final line, it will certainly be used to retract the pink and purple lines a bit, and obviously used to alleviate some of the congestion happening over there. Our triangle intersection is getting extremely loaded, which is certainly not very inviting, not very comforting either. And for a while, it just ends up with me sort of just resetting the Shinkansen on the red line just to be able to deal with all this. Nevertheless, thanks to the Shinkansen's fast speed and the fact that I had two intersections set up very nicely, allowed me to basically deal with that problem fairly quickly with fairly minimal damage, in my opinion, to the rest of the stations on the red line. And so it's trudging along very, very slowly. It's Friday, and it's 2 more days to go before we get some additional resources to help with our ever so increasing congestion issues. And something that's never really made sense to me: why would they shut down the metro because the customers were complaining of congestion? Because it's like, I mean, for those in Melbourne, like I am, I mean, it's like, in the local media, it's basically easy to see that the numbers are increasing, that congestion is going to be a problem, but in no way that this will force the metro to close down, because it's literally the only, well, not the only, but like the main, if not only, public transport system we have. So shutting it down will only make it worse for all of us that's dependent on it to get through. So yeah, I mean, but I'm just being picky on the details. It's really, part of it is just really just recognizing that there is a failure state in this game, and that's basically when you have too many customers banked up. And I mean, I guess the question, I would actually be interested to hear if the developers actually I would be interested to hear if the developers actually had a lot of trouble trying to figure out the failure state of this game. But maybe it was pretty easy to dream up, and as long as they dropped it not having to be realistic. But yeah, that was just an interesting thought of experiment that I have just happened to segue into. So yeah, that's something interesting that I just happened to stumble across. So things are getting pretty cramped, and I'm not gonna lie, it's week 10 now, so that's basically means I'm done. I've got my achievement and I'm pretty happy, even though I had achieved it before on a previous recording. I mean, I had achieved it before on a previous one, but I actually didn't record that one, so had to end up playing it again. And so I was a bit worried in thinking, right, well, what's good enough doesn't mean I have to reach week 10, or doesn't mean I have to reach week 11, and I was just sort of being a bit all uppity about that. So, as I said before, I've got my final line, and now I'm sort of just retracting the pink line in order to get this final line to sort of help out. But now that I reach week 10, it's kind of a non-issue, and at this stage I was actually pretty happy to have sort of done the achievement, and so I could just wash my hands of it. Certainly this mini metro series is extended much longer than I expected it to, mainly due to my own incompetence, really. So as such, I'm quite glad to actually have wrapped up to be able to record a video for each and all of the achievements. So but certainly mini metro has proved to be a very not sneakily, but I wouldn't say challenging either, but definitely a very rewarding game. So with that, with 2,376 passengers, past week 10, I've achieved the just week 10 in Osaka. I'm not sure why they couldn't think of a better name, but then that's not really for me to criticize. So with that, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to like the video, and of course subscribe if you'd like to see more. So with that, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.